Okay. Hello and welcome everyone. Good morning, DDD. Welcome to the 9th International Conference on Drylands, Deserts, and Desertification. With over 50 sessions and representatives from all over the world, bringing together scientists, stakeholders, and those who are curious and wish to learn more. Let's give a round of applause to our most distinguished guest, which is all of you, the conference participants. Thank you for coming. Thank you. I would like to thank our distinguished guests, Dean of BIDR, Professor Noam Weisbrod, His Excellency Frederic Journes, Ambassador of France to Israel, Dr. Giuseppe Fallini, the Italian Embassy Science Attaché, and Professor Alon Tal, the pioneer of the DDD conferences. I would like to say that the BGU president called this morning that he's sick and he really regrets, and hopefully he'll be here on Thursday. We would like to thank all the people who made DDD 2025 happen. Esther, Dorit, Julia, Brandt, our amazing maintenance and security teams, students, volunteers, our sponsors, Americans for BGU, the Goldman Sonnenfeld School for Sustainability and Climate Change, CACAL, BCSC, and our UNCCD partners. Our theme this year is Sustainable Drylands, Shaping Humanity's Future. Drylands cover over 40% of Earth's land surface, and despite common misconceptions of drylands as barren spaces, there are significant and rich ecosystems that provide insights and tools for sustainable, resilient, and prosperous existence. Desertification is a major challenge that spans multiple disciplines. David Ben-Gurion said that if an expert says it can't be done, bring another one. And at the DDD, we gather experts. DDD 2025 will host over 1,000 participants from 39 different countries over a period of 5 amazing days with 52 different sessions, 7 whole day excursions, and great people. I call for the release of the hostages Sutisak Rintalak and Ran Gvili, and I wish for peace. I hope you will enjoy the talks, the inspiration, the activities, and the mingling. And don't forget to enjoy our amazing scenery. Go DDD. Before I call our distinguished speaker, the ambassador of France is here. I'm not sure. Yeah. Before I call you 1 minute, I'll just give some technical things. After our great keynote talk from Professor Will Barnett, we will have some, just to let you know, at lunchtime, we have 7 campus tours. So make sure to, if you want to look, there'll be lunch, and at the same time, 20-25 minutes of tours that you could walk. People will be waiting with signs from agriculture to energy to ecology to history. Okay, don't forget that. This will be together with a post-session and a light lunch. And this is all for now. So I would like to invite His Excellency, the Ambassador of France to Israel.
Thank you so much. Well, distinguished everybody, I'm very happy that I have this occasion to take a few minutes of your attention at this opening moment of our talks today to share with you a few facts which I believe make DDD important right here, right now. There's 5 things. Fact number 1, the war which we've been living in this region for the last 2 years is actually coming to an end. There might be additional outbursts of conflict here and there, but the truth is that the cards have been redistributed. So what we are entering now is a phase of trying to reach a stability architecture in the region. And that implies the possibilities of increased cooperation between Israel and its neighbors. Fact number 2, we have also entered a ruthless period of brutal force competition worldwide. Multilateral cooperation is suffering. Science is challenged by alternative facts, which means by nonsense. But if science is challenged, technology is worshipped. And that gives the approach you've chosen here at DDD a very important advantage. Fact number 3, look at what's happening in the neighborhood. The last 2 important meetings, technical meetings regarding desertification, took place in neighboring countries in the Middle East. There was the Science and Technology Innovation Day at UNCCD COP16 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, last December. And in February of 24, it was a workshop to improve UNCCD capabilities in Doha, Qatar. And if you look at the cooperations with Israel, with its emerging partners like India, you see that aridity management is extremely important. You have opened centers for water technology at ITT Madras and ITT Rohkri, so that's the future. Fact number 4, I just have 2 left. Restoring Israel's relationship with its Western partners in particular, when they've been damaged, will not come from the political level. Your leadership here is still too busy and too angry. And our leaderships home, even though they're trying to calm down things, they also have other things on the menu, like Ukraine. And there is only so much political capital that they can invest in restoring the relationship. So basically the relationships with Europe, with Australia, Canada, the whole of the world of Western societies, it will be redone by initiatives like yours, by people who meet despite the boycotts, despite the restraint of many visitors who hesitate to come. And why will they do that? Because there are topics where if you're not working with Israel, you're just out of the game. And this is one of them. Fact number 5, we are also facing an issue which is precisely extremely important for a country like mine. Why? Because desertification is happening home. It's only 1.5% of territory, but it's happening. Desertification is massively impacting an area close to Europe, Northern and Western Africa, and it has consequences on business and on migration. We need to fix those areas so that they remain stable and that they actually become business partners. And also, globally speaking, dry areas, as you all know here, it's half of the population of the world, it's almost half of the agricultural impact. We can't let desertification change that balance. It has global consequences. It is also in dry areas that we have the best chances to produce massively affordable solar energy. And that's going to be one of the keys to power AI, now that we see that AI is running short on electricity. So basically making dry areas stable, livable, is one of the keys to the future. And as a final note, being a diplomat, that's my job. That set of conditions make it possible to consider that in a short future, multilateral cooperation on those issues will be an imperative. And that's how we restart working together, make long efforts to create worldwide consensus. That's the thing that French diplomacy was traditionally good at. That's how we did the Paris Agreement. We may be working on other things. So best of luck for the works today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I call come. There's lots of space here in front. Come, come. So I call Professor Noam Weisbrod, the dean of this great place where we are, the Institutes of the Desert Research.
Thank you, Shimon. A lot of people. It's nice. So good morning and welcome everyone. It is a real honor to gather here with researchers, students, policymakers, an industry leader in the 2025 International Conference on Drylands, Desert and Desertification, the DDD as we call it. As Shimon mentioned, it's the 9th DDD conference, 19 years after the first one. They were all here in Boker campus, now the Sylvan Adams campus at Boker of the Ben Gurion University of the Negev. And I've been here long enough to remember all the DDDs from the first one. And it is always a very exciting event where we meet, we explore, we learn, and we share the knowledge and bring new ideas about drylands and deserts. As mentioned here, it's not a secret that the past 2 years have been very difficult for our country, and I don't think there is a need to elaborate on that. We are grateful for those who have returned home from captivity and waiting for another 2 that are still missing. I think that the time since October 7th, 2023 have brought conflict and uncertainty that tested us in ways we really never expected. And maybe this is one of the reasons that this conference is more than just an academic meeting. I think it's kind of an act of hope. This conference was supposed to be last year and it was postponed because of the war, and we are really, really happy that we managed to do it this year. I think that it reflects our strength and our commitment to understanding and improving life in drylands. I think that your presence here shows the power of collaboration, the value of science, and our shared desire for peace. Here in the heart of the Israeli Negev Desert, at the Jacob Blaustein Institute for Desert Research, we're in the center of the global dryland research. And this landscape that in the past was considered to be harsh, with intense heat, limited water, fragile soils, is now kind of recognized as a beacon of innovation. Shimon showed a slide from 2014 that drylands cover about 40%, but it's actually now more than 45% from the earth and support billions of people. And as desertification advances, and it is advancing, and more people are living in drylands, the importance of drylands is continue to grow. And people that are living in these areas need good and sustainable future. And the theme of the DDD this year, Sustainable Drylands Shaping Humanity's Future, I think it's way more than just a slogan. It is a call for action. And water scarcity, land degradation, and climate change are real challenges that require shared solution. The DDD is also special because it brings many fields together. And in the coming days, we will move between ecology, water, food systems, energy, health, and society. I think that real solutions appear where these areas connect, and this is the DDD. Being in the Negev reminds us of both fragility and the promise of drylands. And here at the Blaustein Institute of the Ben Gurion University, we have studied these challenges for decades and have some very successful research that was going on. But real progress depends on global partnerships like the partnerships that are being developed here at the DDD. I want to take this opportunity and thank the many people that were involved in this conference, the keynote speakers, the steering committee headed by Shimon that is doing outstanding job, the session organizers, and everyone who helped to make this event possible. To finalize, to summarize, I really wish you a productive and inspiring conference. Let the conversations begin, and welcome again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Weisbrod. So just one last thing. This conference is together and in support with the UNCCD, which every year brings either the head or the chief scientist. This year, in the last moment, they couldn't come, but they prepared the last moment recording. And I would like to present Professor Barron, who really wanted to be here.
Excellencies, Professor Shimon Rachmilevitch of Ben-Gurion University of the Negev, colleagues from all DDD partner institutions, participants to the 9th International Conference on Drylands, Deserts, and Desertifications, greetings from Bonn, Germany. It is a profound honor to address you as you gather once more at this remarkable venue in Sidi Boker. For 17 years, the Drylands, Deserts, and Desertification Conference has stood as a beacon of scientific excellence. It has consistently aligned with the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification's evolving agenda, and it has done so at critical moments when the world most needed clarity on dryland science and its policy implications. Today, we gather at such a moment. This year's theme, Shaping Humanity's Future, speaks to the urgent issues being addressed under the UNCCD's science agenda. 12 months ago at UNCCD's COP16, the UNCCD released 2 landmark science policy interface reports that fundamentally shift our understanding of what we face across the spectrum of drylands, deserts, and desertification, and what we can do to address land degradation and build resilience to drought and aridity trends. The science is sobering. Over the past 3 decades, more than 75% of the Earth's land has become drier. Global drylands have expanded by 4.3 million square kilometers, an area equal to half of Australia. Entire ecosystems face irreversible transformation when small increases in aridity cross critical thresholds. The human dimensions are staggering. 5 billion people, 2 in every 5 people on Earth, could inhabit dry lands by century's end under high emissions scenarios. The population in dry lands has already doubled since 1990. Yet these profound shifts remain poorly understood by policymakers who have long focused on drought response rather than long-term aridification. Rising aridity is permanent. Unlike droughts from which we have the potential to recover, the drier climates now setting into parts of all regions around the world will lead to irrevocable ecosystem state changes. But the science also offers hope. This is where the second report of the UNCCD SPI enters the conversation. The path forward lies in what we call Sustainable Land Use Systems, SLUS, an integrative framework that achieves land degradation neutrality while simultaneously advancing multiple development goals. As you know, LDN, which is integral to SDG Target 15.3, is a resilience framework that, through a no net loss approach, helps countries optimize their use and management of land, helping navigate the many competing demands for precious land resources. But that is much easier to say than to do. Thanks to DDD and the work of scientists like you all over the past few decades, we know what to do at the project level. We have the proven approaches and technologies to sustainably manage land before it becomes degraded, and to employ ecological rehabilitation or restoration when degradation has already occurred. But we are failing to use all that we have learned because economies of nations and watersheds make things much more complex at the landscape level. Today, we need all of our land interventions across the landscape to ecologically and economically and socially support each other everywhere in the world. Sustainable land use systems is not about isolated interventions. It's about systems thinking. It's about recognizing that healthy land is the foundation for food security, water security, climate resilience, and biodiversity conservation all at once. When we restore land through sustainable practices, through agroforestry, regenerative livestock production, water harvesting, what have you, we are trying to do the right things. But we do plan and in an integrated way pursue multiple interventions simultaneously in different locations across the landscape. If we could do this through a systematic approach, we reduce ongoing degradation, we reverse past damage, we avoid future losses, we sequester carbon, we protect biodiversity, we strengthen food systems, we build community resilience, and we create economic returns that decouple growth from environmental damage. But this only works if we do it in the right way. SLUS, Sustainable Land Use Systems, only works if people are at the center, meaning social justice and inclusive governance. This requires securing land tenure. This demands that marginalized communities, women, indigenous peoples, and local stakeholders have genuine voices in the decisions that affect their futures. It requires appropriate policy frameworks designed to accelerate positive action. It requires capacity. It requires innovative financing that de-risks restoration to bring in the private sector. It requires participatory planning across landscapes and sectors. This is the conversation we must have in the lead up to COP17 in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia next August. Restore land, restore hope will be our rallying call. But how do we restore hope? By grounding our actions in solid science, as you are going to be working on this week. By recognizing that healthy land is not a luxury, it is the foundation for the future we are shaping. By understanding that the scale of the challenge demands the scale of our response. By ensuring that scientists everywhere that work on any dimension of land and water are working towards common goals. Colleagues, we need to be far greater than the sum of our individual scientific discoveries and publications to support our countries and people. The DDD conference series has always been a place where science informs policy, where researchers share discoveries that help governments and communities make better decisions. This year, as we confront the reality of global drying and embrace the promise of sustainable land use systems, that role has never been more vital. I urge you to look beyond your individual presentations and sessions. Look for connections. Look for how soil science speaks to water security, how drought resilience connects to food systems, how restoration creates livelihoods, how inclusive governance enables transformation. The scientific advances in this room will shape what governments do in Mongolia next August. Your insights will inform the commitments nations make to combat land degradation and build hope for the generations inheriting this changing world. In closing, I want to thank Shimon and all the other organizers from Ben-Gurion University of the Negev for hosting this 9th iteration of a conference that has been so in step with UNCCD's mission. Your commitment to aligning scientific discovery with policy relevance sets the gold standard for what international science conferences can achieve. I wish you a remarkably productive conference, and I look forward to the outcomes. Thank you.
So I think this was a great introduction for our distinguished keynote speaker, who is distinguished Professor William Barnett from Stanford University. And I call you to give the talk. please give it's not, we really appreciate that you all come from all over the world and also from Stanford. So thank you.
Look at you. Look at yourselves. Oh my gosh. You are from all over the world. Almost. Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to speak. It's an honor to be at this conference. And I see old friends here, and I see new friends I hope to make over the time of this conference. My name is Bill Barnett, and I am not an expert in any kind of science of drylands, deserts, or desertification. I am a social scientist, and I have spent my career studying change. I came to Stanford in 1991 to study the growth and failure of organizations and the transformation of industries. We are now in the middle of a revolution, and there's a lot of confusion about that because of the rhetoric coming out of our policymakers. So I'm going to talk first about an idea, and then I'm going to give some examples, and then I'll open it up for you to ask questions or give comments after what I've said. Does that sound like a plan? Okay, good. And those of you who are busy on your phone, you should put it away and pay attention. Yes, that's part of the change. And when you're in those of you who are former students of mine, you know that if I see you with your phone, I will take it away. This is a special time. So, oh, I hate this slide. It tells me all the jobs I am failing to do. So here, let me shut this off. Okay, so we'll get to that. So the idea that I want to talk about is the idea of autocatalytic change. And I'm sorry to use the jargon term autocatalytic. It comes out of science, but it also applies in social science. Something is autocatalytic when an entity does things that catalyze a change in the entity, right? Where you actually create the conditions of your own change. And the sustainability revolution is autocatalytic. The less we do about sustainability, the more the earth speaks to us, causing us to try to do something about sustainability. When the climate deniers say to me, this is a fad, it's a hype, it will go away, I say to them, I hope you're right. I hope on my grave it says, late in life, Bill became confused by a fad. But I fear that is not true. What we know is going to happen, we've known is going to happen for some time. Can I tell you a story? All right. The year was 1970, and I was 12 years old. So I was in, what would that be, 7th grade, middle school they call it in the United States. And we had a substitute teacher that day at school. You know what it's like to have a substitute teacher? I think this is a worldwide phenomenon, right? When a substitute teacher comes, it's great news, right? Because you can goof around. So we had a substitute teacher. I'll never forget this. And on the day you have a substitute teacher, you have to have a name tag, right? So the teacher knows it. So my name tag said Billy. My name is William, but in America we call it Bill. It's like Bill Clinton. I'm not like Bill Clinton, but it's like Bill Clinton, right? And so Billy, it said on my name tag. So the substitute teacher comes in. He's a young guy, just out of teaching college. And he's carrying this great big stack of assignments, right? The big stack of assignments and he looks at the class and he looks at the assignments and he puts them down and he says, forget about that. I'm going to tell you about something. So he went up to the chalkboard. Now, for a lot of you young people, I have to explain chalk. The beauty of chalk, so it's a archaic, prehistoric technique for drawing on, and so you can use the side of the chalk to make the atmosphere of the earth. He drew the earth, and he drew the atmosphere of the earth, and he explained the greenhouse effect. And he explained the forecasts. Now, this is 1970. So he explained the greenhouse effect. And just as he was finishing talking about what would happen based on projections already that we had at that time to the climate of the earth, the bell rang. The bell ringing, is this? Yeah, this is everywhere understood. This is a big deal, right? Because you get to run outside and play when the bell rings. So the bell rang, and so everyone ran outside to play, except me. So I just sat there looking at the picture, and I don't remember this teacher's name. I wish I could remember this teacher's name. I give this talk everywhere. I'm waiting for this guy to identify himself, right? Because he's probably like 80, now, but so I don't remember the guy's name, but he looks at me and everyone's gone, and then he gets this look of great concern. Now we would call it concern over climate anxiety, right? But that time we didn't have that term. And he sees me, he comes over, and he's afraid he's destroyed my psyche, right? And he says, Billy, why don't you go out and play with the children? And I looked at him and I looked at the board and I said, this seems really important. It's the first. Do you remember when you first learned about this? I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, really? And he said, it is important. It is very important. But, he said, you won't have to worry about this until you're really old. All right, here I am, worrying about it. We should have probably worried about it a little more in 1970. In the early 60s, Rachel Carson published Silent Spring. Who's read Silent Spring? Okay, and the rest of you should read Silent Spring. You know what's so remarkable about Silent Spring? It was the book that in the United States kicked off the environmental movement. Carson almost never discusses climate. She doesn't discuss climate. It's pollution, exactly. Silent Spring refers to an imagined future without birds. It was a biodiversity concern growing out of an awareness at the time that we were polluting our environment. Because we were already getting feedback from the earth because of the pollution of the environment. We have tended to respond to the call of the earth when the earth responds to our mistreatment of the earth. Autocatalytic change. Autocatalytic change. So as much as I would like us to postpone the revolution and we could be comfortable, the longer we postpone the revolution, the louder the earth speaks. We will achieve a sustainable future. The longer we take in achieving that in working towards that sustainable future, the more people will die and the more people will suffer, but we will end up there because the process is autocatalytic. There are many other things that ignorant people can roll back, like tolerance, appreciation of diversity, but sustainability is the one thing that is inevitable. So let's talk about this. Let me give some examples. Now, I don't put words on slides, but I put these words on there. I think it's appropriate for us to begin this conference with this statement. We have mastered mass production and consumption, and faced with clear scientific evidence that our economic and social systems as currently organized are not sustainable, business and government leaders worldwide share the responsibility to transition humankind to more sustainably organized systems of production and consumption. Now, let me tell you, you do not transition systems happily. The creation of new systems requires the destruction of the status quo. If this makes you uncomfortable, that's a good sign. Whenever you're comfortable with the pace of change, that's a sign that we're not doing enough. Especially for you old people, you are the consequence of the 20th century. Everything you see happening should make you uncomfortable. You young people, you should make the old people uncomfortable. It's okay to laugh at that. It has to be nervous laughter, because we must destroy the status quo in order to build a sustainable world. I want to begin with the facts. So what we're looking at is the Great Acceleration. I won't give you a lot of graphs, don't worry. But this graph is the same shape, it's just different measures. All taking off around 1950. Now, what led to the Great Acceleration? There were two revolutions. Right? One revolution, beginning back around the year 1800, but at different paces in different parts of the world, was the mechanization revolution. You think of it as the Industrial Revolution, but the mechanization revolution is only the first part of that. There is then the digital revolution of the 20th century. Now, what's interesting about these two revolutions is we didn't see them coming. So I study organizational failure. And each of these revolutions came with the destruction of a status quo prior to the revolution. So with the mechanization revolution, our great-great-grandparents' organizations were destroyed as mass production took place of earlier systems of production, massive rural to urban migration, plight and poverty in the cities, ideological turmoil with the rise of radical theories such as Marxism, trying to make sense out of it, literature reflecting concern about humanity's treatment of itself. Think Dickens' Hard Times. Famine, massive migration, all of this coming out of a change that we did not see coming. We did not see it coming. The status quo was caught completely by surprise. The next revolution that came along as part of this is the digital revolution that you're more familiar with. The ideas of disruptive technology that people talk about in business schools where the status quo of the 20th century was just, of the early 20th century, those large organizations were destroyed by new digital technologies in the organizations that brought them to market. And the status quo didn't see this coming. The unit economics of the digital revolution made no sense. It was dismissed by the status quo, and those companies are dead, and those policymakers are outdated. So we're now in the middle of that digital revolution. Those two revolutions create this tremendous escalation in population, wealth, and many measures of wealth that then also lead to primary energy use, fertilizer consumption, water use, paper production, transportation, telecommunications, and other sectors increasing. And what is the consequence? A set of changes in the Earth system that are the result of those other changes. So carbon dioxide increase, nitrous oxide increase, methane, stratospheric ozone, surface temperatures, ocean acidification, the capturing of our marine fish, increases in aquaculture, the results of fertilization leading to nitrogen in the coastal zone, the loss of biodiversity and tropical rainforest, the domestication of land, and so forth. The experts are in this room. I don't have to tell you about this. But the striking thing to point out is this is the Earth speaking to us. This is the autocatalytic process that I just described. This is a change that we see coming. You see the difference with this revolution? The other two revolutions we didn't see coming because they emerged from various social, economic, and technological changes being generated by human evolution, social evolution. This change, the sustainability revolution, we see it coming. So when you see a change coming, it's possible to think about the economic opportunities that are made possible by that change. Now, this might be upsetting to some of you. I just talked about a bunch of changes that will lead to the destruction of human life and increases in human misery. And the guy from the business school is talking about making money. Now, in my course on sustainability, we don't go right to this. We first have a few weeks where we debate capitalism. But I was told I don't have time to conduct a 2-month debate on capitalism with you, so I'm going to go right to the engine of change that is now operating in the world. Like it or not, we are in a capitalist world economy. And what is interesting is that if you look around, and this is just a few of the changes, there is a revolution going on among change makers from the bottom up, even as our policymakers are ignoring the cry of the earth. And that's what I'd like to show you. Let's have some examples. So let's talk about net zero carbon emissions. Let's just start there. So let's talk about renewable power. I was struck when I visited Green Lab up in northern Denmark, and some of you have been there. It's a tremendous example of the innovative ideas of Henrik Stiesel, the original inventor of the wind turbine. In fact, it was Alon Tal here. Thank you very much, Professor Tal, who introduced me to Henrik. Henrik has here in Green Labs a context for the creation and scaling of innovative ideas. So many of the innovative ideas in this conference, in fact, could be scaled there, and they can be scaled there in a low carbon footprint because of the vast amount of wind power that is available in northern Denmark. We're going to come back to Green Labs in a minute. Ebby Cruz here, Vestergaard, comes to Stanford all the time now. Much of the work I've been doing in the last few years has been to come to change makers like you and invite you to Stanford. I know Alon and Tamara Zandberg here come, and I would invite you to come as well. Wait until the conference is over, though. We want to keep you here during the conference, but then you come be my guest at Stanford. Let's continue to talk about renewable power. One of the most innovative steel companies in the world is POSCO, the Korean steel company. I work a lot with these Korean companies. Now this picture is interesting. That's the Finex steel plant on the other side, which used to be the most innovative steel plant in the world. Now the most innovative steel plant is actually behind me, and they wouldn't let me take a picture of it because they didn't want to reveal what it looks like to their competitor across the street, the Hyundai Steel Company. I love the Koreans. It's like this, right? It's this. They're, and their baseball teams compete the same way. So they compete to be more sustainable, and there's a lesson in that. But the facility that's behind me will, within a few years, be producing steel with hydrogen. And as many of you know, if we can produce green hydrogen, that solves one of the so-called power to X problems of creating steel with a net zero carbon methodology. And it's incredibly heartening to see this. So you'll hear the bad news coming out of policymakers, but when you're actually talking to people in organizations, they see it coming. And when you see it coming, the rhetoric doesn't matter. We'll have to have greenhouse gas removal. So I've been working with the folks here at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. This is, many of you know Peter Domenical, who is the president of Woods Hole, is working on, and he and Woods Hole are working on putting a measurement system in place in the northern Atlantic to measure the intake of carbon dioxide into the ocean and whether or not that carbon dioxide is successfully sequestered deep in the ocean, because by putting a measurement system in place, our scientists, some of you who are here, can then test whether their innovations to increase carbon dioxide sequestering are effective. Because only if you can measure it will the capitalists pay for it. And so this measurement system turns out to be key. The Ocean Vision system is scaling as we speak. And I didn't mean this to be a tour through my hat collection, but I realize it is. These are all different hats, by the way. So let's talk about adapting the biosphere in food and water, okay? And this will get a little more to the topic of the conference. Here we have, that hat, by the way, is now on the floor of San Diego Bay. I was sailing. It was a terrible loss. But here we have Professor Fernandez. What's interesting about her job, this is less of a technical issue. So the other issues I was just talking about are very technical, right? Issues of energy and technology. Professor Fernandez is working on a behavioral problem. Right? Many sustainability issues are technical. Many are behavioral. And what Professor Fernandez is working on is that right before we met, just up the coast in Chile, I had been meeting with the fisher folk. Now, Javier Basurto has shown, Professor Javier Basurto from Stanford Sustainability School, in the latest issue of Nature, shows that while individual small fisheries are collectively, they provide 60% of the world's ocean-based food stock. So it's a collective, very important source of nutrients, which of course is changing because of the changes in the climate and the warming of the oceans, so that the fish are moving. Well, I was just meeting before this meeting with Professor Fernandez with the fisher folk, and they have a problem. They fish according to the traditional routes where their parents before them fished, but the fish are not there now. So they have to follow the fish. And so what Professor Fernandez and her colleagues are doing is getting the information to the fisher folk about where the fish are moving, and in some cases helping them farm fish. because their livelihoods depend on it, and in fact, the food security of the world depends on it. Now, here's my favorite picture. Where are you, Alon? So it's good to see you again. So this was my first trip here, and I was deeply affected by this trip. Okay, now I did not prepare this slide just for this conference. I give this talk all over the world, and everyone loves you. Okay, so so come on, you can do it. Like, this is a time to feel good about what you got. And Professor Bengal blew me away, right? Alon blew me away. I learned so much in that. That was my old beard. I don't know. What do you think? I still have the hat though. But and now, in fact, the Netafim, right, the technologies that came, that company, and Nati Barak, and that whole story is now in my course at Stanford. So we brought them in there to be, because the drip irrigation systems that you developed here are used all over the world. They're used in the Salinas Valley in California. They're used in the Philippines. Why would you use them in the Philippines? There's plenty of water in the Philippines. Well, because they reduce methane as well, right? The drip irrigation. I mean, obviously the experts are all here. And these changes are happening despite the ignorance of policymakers, because we see the revolution coming. Are you getting the theme here? The revolution will not be postponed. It is happening. It is happening, and thank you, Alon, for making it happen. So here I am relieved to have crossed the bridge, because it's about 1,000 feet below that bridge, and it was during a storm. This is in the Philippines. And what's interesting here in terms of biodiversity and land use is that this is the area where the Mount Pinatubo eruption had devastated the land. And are you Pinoy? Yeah, where are you from? Ah. It's funny. When I go to the Philippines, Stanford doesn't object, but when I go to Mindanao, they get upset, so I don't tell them. Yeah, that's how you do it. Anyway, good to see you. So what's interesting is this area, we were failing using typical Western means to regenerate the rainforest. But the Aeta tribe used their traditional ecological knowledge to reforest this area. And now the Stanford ecologists are there studying the methods. And I know we have ecologists here who do that as well. Not all traditional ecological knowledge is adaptive, but some of it is. And we can learn lessons from that. It's actually very interesting to think about how well that's worked in the Philippines. Here's another moment in the Philippines. This has to do with coral. Maneg here, by the way, I go back to all these places. American academics are famous for the one and done trip. So let me assure you, these are relationships we maintain, because then we send the MBA students. We wanted to send MBA students to come here, and then the attack happened. So now we're going to do it. Okay, yeah, so we'll bring them. I love to bring the MBA students here because we infect them with the reality of the revolution, so they can become revolutionaries too. Right, that's the idea. But here Maneg is showing us where the local fisher folk have been dropping dynamite to fish, which is very bad for the coral, right? And we're trying to plant super coral. There's a big debate about that in Palawan. It's interesting. Look at the little solar cells up there. Maneg sees the change coming. We see the change coming. This is a revolution we see coming. It's interesting to look at what's going on right now in Brazil's rainforests. This is right outside of Manaus. Can you find the scientists? Okay, so they're the women. And they're explaining to me how Yipasoni here, the member of the Tucano tribe, has been organizing his village to harvest these rare mushrooms. And the reason this is important for them is that they found that the Koreans and Japanese especially, but the Asian markets generally, will spend a lot of money on these mushrooms. Therefore, they don't have to deforest. So agroforestry is very important in that part of the world. One of the things about the revolution is that we have to respect the need for people in areas where natural capital is rich and abundant to still sustain their lives. There's an arrogance, especially, unfortunately, among Americans, that says that now that we have industrialized, the rest of you should hold off because we would like you to enjoy the rainforest as the lungs of the earth. Yeah, and so that's not possible. There are 700 urban areas in Amazonia, 700 urban areas. There are people who need livelihoods. But those livelihoods can be compatible with biodiversity when we take seriously applications of the scientific knowledge of people like these two very courageous scientists who've taken their science into the rainforests because they see the change coming. They see the change coming. Let's talk a little about the circular economy. How am I doing on time? 10 minutes? Oh, that's terrible. I got to give time for Q&A. All right, let me go faster. Okay, all right. Yeah, I talk too much. Aren't you glad you don't live with me? Although over breakfast, I don't talk like this, okay? Let me assure you. So, so this is interesting. So this is the world's biggest paper company. Suzano. Suzano plants 1.2 million trees a day. Yeah. And it cuts them right back down 5 years later. Okay. It's very controversial because these are monocultural eucalyptus trees. This is not helping biodiversity. What it is doing is it allows us to have paper without deforestation. Now, half of those trees are burned in order to turn the other half of the tree into paper. What if the burning of those trees could be done in a pyrolysis method that would sequester the carbon? We'll talk about that in a minute because some of the change makers yet to come in the slides are now working with Suzano to see if this is possible. Here they're making plastics out of paper so that it's biodegradable, which would help a lot if you go back to the Philippines where all that plastic is making it hard to go to Palawan. Oh, well, let me just go back, though, before we're seeing the change coming, okay? We see it coming. These changes are happening despite the policymakers, not because of them. I love Shinya. This guy, super energetic guy, comes up with this way of producing these tiny microcircuits without using chemicals to carve away at a silicon plate. Instead, 3D printing, additive manufacturing, produces them with zero waste. Now you might think, oh, come on, how much waste in one tiny circuit? Not much, but we make many, 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 many of those circuits every year. I paused because I can never remember the exact number. I don't know if it's in the billions or in the trillions, but there's lots of waste. These new circuits are zero waste. There is waste in the production of the 3D printing machine, but it's a fixed cost waste, so it's nothing compared when you scale, right? They're now used in all of Apple's products. And as a result, everybody who competes with Apple is having to adopt this technology. When we compete on the basis of sustainability, we destroy the status quo. And any organizations in the status quo who don't get on the train are left behind and are disrupted by the new revolution. We see it coming. Now we're back up in northern Denmark again, and this is Stiesdal's innovation that Alon Tal, Professor Tal introduced me to. which is, this is Sky Clean. This is this method for using pyrolysis to sequester the carbon from the burning of that agricultural waste, which we're trying to introduce at Suzano without success at this point, but incredibly important technological approach. Now, so far, all I've talked about is technology and behavior. What about justice? Who pays, who benefits, and who suffers? We cannot power the revolution on the backs of the victims of the 20th century. Instead, our solutions must be fair if they are to be feasible. And so let me give you some examples. So here are my friends, the Jaramillo sisters, who are leaders in the Mapuche tribe in Chile. Now, there has been genocide of the Mapuche over the years, but there are still many millions of them who live in Chile, and they live in harmony with the land, but in opposition to many of the mass production facilities in their areas. And in fact, we brought them, some of you, I think you might have met them at Stanford during our sustainability summit, because their experience in using traditional ecological knowledge can benefit us all if we listen and respect the integrity of their communities as we develop. That flag above us is considered a terrorist symbol in some circles in Chile, but the change is coming, whether the status quo likes it or not. Here we're back in the Philippines again. So this is my friend Rizal de los Santos in his shop down in Pasig City. And this is the same place 3 weeks later. Yeah, the super typhoon. 3 weeks later. The rainfall density increasing, rainfall frequency increasing. I don't think I have to explain this to you. Of all crowds, you get this, right? Well, here we are a year later. And that is the famous ecologist, my good friend and colleague, Rodolfo Durso. If you look in his sunglasses, you see the reflection of the MBA study trip. We ended up taking them there instead. So, you know, there's always more MBAs, so we'll bring them here. And the, you know, it was so interesting. What really upset the MBAs was that they saw the chickens everywhere. And they were all roosters. Anybody know why they were all roosters? Fighting. Yeah, that upset the MBAs. And when Rizal saw that they were upset, he said, oh, no, no. He says, well, he said it in Tagalog, but he said, you know, I'm Christian. We don't gamble. Don't you love it when cultures just completely don't connect? You know, my students would be fine eating the chickens. They just don't want the chickens to fight, and they don't care if you gamble. But, you know, what's so interesting and heartening here is the adaptation of Filipino culture. What is the word in Tagalog for that togetherness where you work together to solve problems? A famous word. Sorry, it's so bad when the speaker does it. Aren't you glad you're not her? I mean, I feel so bad. I am so sorry. Yeah, what is it again? Yeah, I can't pronounce it right anyway. So it's it's a beautiful thing in Filipino culture where they stick together. Yeah, you're united. You don't see the abject poverty that you see in San Francisco, but you have much lower standard incomes in this area because people stick together, and that helps them get through and be adaptive in the face of the changes. They are seeing it coming. And so we're seeing environmental justice in the form of recovery because of that adaptation. And here's my last picture. I asked Asmania, how do I identify you? I want to tell your story. She said, call me Asmania, leader of the Defenders of Pari Island. So here she is We are standing on a mountain of dead coral. That's what the white is. The corrupt government dredged it out of that harbor and then stopped the project after destroying the coral, so that Osmania's husband and all the other fisher folk have to now go far away to find the fish, and at such cost. We need sustainable development because the coral is not nice to have, it is essential to the future. Have you gotten the message here? Do not be disheartened by the ignorance of the rhetoric that we are hearing. The sustainability revolution will not be postponed. We see the change coming, and the revolution is happening from the bottom up, not with the help of policymakers for the most part, unfortunately. Far fewer millions would die if we had sensible policy. But it's happening despite the policymakers because we see it coming. Now you here, you're already the converted. When you hear the voices of opposition, remember, they are the voices of the 20th century. Their organizations will be destroyed and they will die. That is how change happens. The next generation, the generation of you young people, is the generation of the 21st century. You will be known as the greatest generation because while my generation created mass production and consumption, your generation is now creating sustainable production and consumption. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we have time for several questions. Oh, yes. Peter.
Thank you very much for the talk. Really well done. How will the AI and the sustainability revolutions interact or combine or morphosize or whatever you'd like to say about that?
Thank you for that, Peter. So let me get a feel for the room. Who knows about the Kaya identity? Okay, so the two of us could go to coffee and talk about this, right? Because, all right, so that helps me to know. So later you gotta, tonight when you got nothing to do, not now, but later, okay, Google up the Kaya identity. And it's just an identity that breaks down the components that are the mechanisms by which carbon dioxide is increasing. So we're going to walk through an identity in the air here. I'm like the weather man, right? So you've got the amount of carbon dioxide produced by human activity here, and then an equal sign, okay? Now that's going to depend on the size of the human population, first of all. But not only on that, like if we had no people, then we wouldn't have human-generated carbon dioxide, so population matters. And that'll get up to what, 10.2 billion by 2060, something like that. So that's going to be a big number, even without AI. But then you have to multiply the population by the wealth of the population, because the wealthier we are, the more carbon dioxide we produce. And AI will play a role there. That's first of all. So now you have population times some measure of wealth, like say GDP per capita. So you've got population times GDP per capita, right? But of course that depends on how energy intensive our wealth is. If we had very energy efficient wealth, you'd have less carbon dioxide. So we're going to multiply that by the amount of energy that we use. But of course, then and by the way, that'll be influenced by AI in the upward direction, big time, underlying subtext of your question. But of course, that also depends on how carbon intensive our energy is. So we have to multiply that by the carbon dioxide per unit of energy produced. And so now if you cancel, you end up with carbon dioxide equals carbon dioxide. It's an identity, but we've broken down the identity to show that any change, including AI, has an impact on carbon dioxide that depends on how much it increases our wealth, how much it increases the energy intensity of our wealth, and how much it increases the carbon intensity of our energy. AI is driving up the first term, but the smart use of AI can drive down the other two terms. So the bottom line is it depends. If the revolutionaries are using AI to improve the energy efficiency of our wealth and the carbon efficiency of our energy, it could be a positive. If the only people using AI are people who are in the 20th century mindset, it's only going to speed the autocatalytic process that I talked about sooner. So it depends on how we use AI. And remember, while AI has a direct and very large effect on energy use, innovations from AI affect the energy intensity and the carbon intensity of all human activity. So it can even be more profound in the positive direction if you revolutionaries use it in the right way.
What about economic growth? Doesn't it stand in contradiction to sustainability, or do you see a future where sustainability can have economic growth within it?
Thanks very much, Tamir. So Tamir's question speaks to the so-called degrowth question or the decoupling hypothesis. And I'm only throwing the jargon out there so students can Google it up and look at those debates. We're, in a realistic sense, we're unlikely to have degrowth just based on human behavior. Decoupling depends on the Kaya identity once again. Decoupling is where we can have growth, but we don't see the consequent, we don't see the effects, right, in terms of the various planetary boundaries. Let's address that. Growth does not have to be an expansion of the current system. So when growth is an expansion of the current system, you'll never get the decoupling of growth from impact. When growth comes at the ends of the status quo, you sustainability ignorant mechanisms of the 20th century with sustainability oriented systems of the 21st century, and that makes humanity better off. And so it depends on the nature of growth. Just like with AI, how we grow is what determines the impact on the earth. So if you're an innovator who is contributing to economic activity which is destroying the status quo, you're doing the right thing. By the way, I talk a lot about destruction. I don't like to see the destruction of humans. I don't like to see the destruction of the earth. But I celebrate the destruction of systems and organizations that themselves are destructive. And there's a big difference. Because we can organize differently, we can run our economic activities differently, respect human life, but not enshrine the continued existence of organizations that destroy human life. So that's the way to think about growth.
I would like to really thank this inspiring talk. Let's have another, Professor Barnett. Thank you very much. Yeah.